Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. I'm going to invite our guest in, jessicaCaremoore. Just a moment here. Hello everyone and welcome. My guest today, jessicaCaremoore, should be joining us. Oh my God.
That was quick. I saw it. I was like, is this too soon? Am I supposed to wait a second?
Oh my God.
I'm so excited
Jessica,
to be
hello.
here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before we get started, Jessica, let me just give you a proper introduction.
Fine. And I'll fix myself.
Okay. So I want to welcome everyone to Frederick Johnson in Conversation. I am your host, Frederick Johnson. My guest, jessicaCaremoore, is the founder and the CEO of More Black Press and the executive producer, as well as the founder of Black Women Rock, an internationally renowned poet, playwright, performance artist, and live arts producer. Jessica is the 2019 and 2017 Knight Arts Foundation Award winner. She's the 2016 Corsage Live Arts Fellow, a 2015 NAACP Great Expectations awardee, and an Elaine Locke Award recipient from the Detroit Institute of the Arts. She is the author of The Alphabet Versus the Ghetto, The Words Don't Fit in My Mouth, God is Not American, Sunlight Through Bullet Holes, and the critically acclaimed Techno Choreopoem Salt City. Jessica's work has been published in numerous literary collections, and she's performed in stages all over the world, I believe on every continent, including Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, the world-famous Apollo Theater. And her latest work, We Want Our Bodies Back, published by HarperCollins, which is absolutely amazing. Which we are going to get into today. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome jessicaCaremoore.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited that I'm being interviewed on Instagram and I'm not doing the interviewing.
Yes.
So,
yes, you have your own show, which we're going to talk about later. Jessica has her own Instagram live show on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. EST, the jessicaCaremoore Show. Jessica, before we get into the book, though, I want to talk about a social media post that you did earlier this month.
Oh, gosh. What did I say? What did I say?
Earlier this month, sadly, the co-founder of the Miguel Algaran, co-founder of the New York Poets Cafe, world famous New York Poets Cafe, he passed away. You did a social post honoring him, and I want to read a little bit of that post. You said, in 1995, I packed up my purple Ford pickup truck and moved to Brooklyn. This Aloud anthology, the anthology called This Aloud that was co-edited by Mr. Algaran. This Aloud anthology was my map to find my tribe. I was on a mission to find every poet in this collection, and I damn near did. I didn't know much about NYC, but I knew I had to get to the New York Poets Cafe. So my two-part question is, 25 years ago, you were a much younger person. Okay, a very young person. I want to know, who were you? Who was that young woman that had the gumption to get in a purple Ford pickup truck and drive cross country? And tell me what you found.
I'm the same girl. Just so we're clear. Like, I'm still that goofy chick, but I have Sky Miles, and so I do crazy stuff like go to Hong Kong to try to find something, or I go to Ghana now. You know, I got a couple more dollars. I can afford to go to different places now. But I'm still that girl, and I'm still whimsical in that way, and I'm still searching, always in search of my tribe. So yeah, I found Kevin Powell and Willie Perdomo and Tony Medina, Tracy Morris. I mean, you know, it's countless poets in this book. So they were older than me, you know. So you say I'm older, but they're probably in their 50s now. A lot of the poets they're young, right? That's still young, you know what I mean? But they're a little bit older than me. So, but they were already public. Reggie Gaines. I mean, I remember, you know, Reggie Gaines, Bring the Noise, Bring the Funk had gone to Broadway, right, from the Public Theater. And, you know, George C. Wolfe and Savion Glover. So I lied my way into the Public Theater. And Reggie Gaines will tell you this story, because I was a journalist working for the Daily Challenge, but I didn't want to talk to George C. Wolfe. I said hi to Savion Glover. I was like, where is the man, the poet that wrote this show? And so I went to New York by myself. My cousin, I knew my cousin from Alexis, had graduated from NYU. I went to see her graduate. I fell in love with the city. My father had died in 1994, and anyone who knows me knows this story. Like, my father died in 94, who was my hero, and that was a big transition for me. So Detroit, just a part of Detroit died for me when my daddy was gone, and it kind of gave me the gumption to say, you know what, my daddy wouldn't let me go to Brooklyn. I'm about to go to Brooklyn, and he was actually what propelled me to go. My father dying gave me that extra fearlessness. I was 22 when I moved to Brooklyn, and didn't know anyone, and I found all those poets. And so from the New Eureka Poets Cafe and Brooklyn Moon Cafe, which is also the spot that became, that's where I found Saul Williams, Brad Warren, Sharif Simmons, Asha Bandeli, Lisa Jesse Peterson, you know, like that Friday night, Vibe Chameleon, Shaki, and Takala, Carl Hancock Rux. I mean, we all, between Brooklyn Moon and New Eurekan, I found most of those people are in my life.
Yes.
And not in a distant way. Some of them I'm married. I found a couple of husbands around there. Found some boyfriends, you know, people who are like in my life. Talib Kweli, who's one of my best friends, was working in Kuru Books at the time. Yassine Bey, I knew him as Dante Terrell Smith. I knew him as Most Def, was on the open mic with me then. And we were very good friends, and we're like, you know, family to this day. And so, that time period, you know, I call it the Roaring '90s. Was a very magical time, and and I was doing work with comedians. That's how Donnell Rawlings was a poet, who's a comedian, who's on tour with Dave Chappelle right now, and that's why I met Donnell. He was doing poems. Dean Edwards was doing poems they were doing comedy. I'm sorry, inside the poetry spot. So we were like what was beautiful in New York is that like the poets and the comedians and the MCs and the painters. Shout out to Marcia Jones, who was like the premier performance artist painter at the time. You know, we're all in the same room together. We were like-minded artists who were in love with there was something happening, right?
Well, it was definitely a magical time. I mean, for those of us who were nowhere near New York, but I was following poets at that time. I was actually, during a little bit of that time, I was living in San Francisco. We had the World Cafe in Lower
I know the World Cafe.
Yeah, so while you were on the Lower East Side with New York poets, I was in Lower Haight. I was living in Lower Haight, and I was reading my poetry at the World Cafe. And this is like 95, 96. But the beacon was New Eureka Poets Cafe, Brooklyn Moon. And that was what people thought, oh, one day I'll be able to go there. So you get there, you find your tribe, you immerse yourself in this magical culture. Another milestone that comes about, you're not in Brooklyn that long, and now you've moved, you've stayed. Another milestone that comes about is, which even scares me just thinking about it, Jessica, is the Showtime at the Apollo experience. I want to talk about, because that was, back in the day, that was our essential view. Like, we never missed an episode. It always came on these random late night times on the weekend.
1 a.m.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Night. So we saw all the episodes, and I believe you were the first poet to win amateur night. So not only were the first poet to win amateur night, you won 5 weeks consecutively and were retired as Apollo legend. So I want to ask you, how did that opportunity even come about? Because that really brought you to a level of national prominence because of that television series. And then personally, I just want to know how just watching people come out on that stage was terrifying as a viewer in the comfort and safety of my own home.
Right.
Those people came out and rubbed that tree trunk.
What?
And got on that stage, you're like, oh my God.
Come on. We talking about Black people in Harlem. Like, that's, you know, that's like Black people in Detroit. Like, that's not an easy audience.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was magic. You know, I talk about it in retrospect. When it was happening, I was absolutely in shock.
Yeah.
I was a journalist at the time. I was working. That's what I knew. I knew how to write news. So I was working for the Daily Challenge when I went on with Steve Harvey. So I got to the Apollo because of my friend who I talk about all the time, who's out there in LA, Maurice Dwyer, who's a producer, film producer. And he saw me. He was associate producer at the Apollo Theater at the time. He saw me at Brooklyn Moon, and he pulled me to the side. He said, Jessica, I would never say this to any poet. He said, but your poetry, I think you should go to amateur night with it. And I was like, the Apollo? And I was like, I just said, okay. I said, well, tell me what I got to do. And because I'm from Detroit, you know, we didn't have a bunch of poetry cafes. Now, New York was so chic, was so something else for me. It was like this big artsy fartsy town. And Detroit is a rugged city. I read poems at hair shows. I read poems in bars. You know, like the same way Intozaki read poems for color girls, she's reading that in bars in Harlem before she took it anywhere else, right? It was on the Lower East Side with it. So all this support of like poets and art culture, I didn't come up with that necessarily.
Yes.
I did, but in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
And so I don't say no to stages. So I was like, opportunity, okay, y'all come read. I was still learning the train. It was crazy. So, I went to do the Apollo. Yeah.
While it was another stage, though, I mean, honestly, because it's such that when they called your name as the next act, when you walked out for the first time to rub that, I mean, did you look at the people? Did you kind of look above their heads? Like, what really?
You know, you tune it out. You know, Steve Harvey was very funny.
Yeah.
So just with him saying JessicaCaremoore, I was like, oh my God, this shit is so real right now. And so I did rub the wood, rub the stump, and came out. And I really, you know, I was only 20 as a baby. You know, I thought I was grown. You know, at that time, right? And Paul Mooney was there. Brandy was there.
Wow.
Brandy was backstage. The Fugees were there. I remember Brandy was like, I love your poems. Paul Mooney was like, you're amazing. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I went out for the first time, and I remember just kind of centering myself and saying, Jessica, just do your poem. I did not expect to win.
Yeah.
I didn't think they would boo my poem, Black Statue of Liberty, but I was like, they gotta like it. You know, it's a positive poem. But I didn't think I would win. So I went in very humble.
Yes.
And then they were so quiet. So they're so
I always wondered too, Jessica, why did you choose? Because I know you had written Black Statue of Liberty earlier. It was an earlier like poem of yours.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that as the poem you were going to do on what could have just been one time at the Apollo? Like who would? Yeah.
Why Black Statue of Liberty? I asked the last poets who are some of my mentors to this day, Abiodun Oyewole and Umar Ben Hassan. I was at their Sunday open house. And I remember saying, I was like, I'm going on the Apollo. What poem should I do? And they were like, you have to do Black Statue of Liberty. And I was like, and they knew the poem. I had performed that. I opened for the last poets and a group called Sister Griots, who was also mentoring me. These sisters who came out of Howard University and took me on the road with them. This is before the Apollo. The last poets took me on the road with them.
Yes.
And so they were like, that's what you have. I asked my elders.
Yeah.
So I listened to them,
yes.
you know? And so I listened to my elders and I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I didn't expect to win. So after the second win, I was going and ready for the third one. And I did not want to come back out there and do that poem for the third time.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Black folks, so at the Apollo, they take 3 shows in a night. So supposedly the audience is supposed to leave.
Yes.
You know, Black people don't leave.
It's the same audience. And it was so smart and I'm glad they let you, you know, we're open to you doing another piece.
I begged.
Those last couple. So, okay. So now you've come to national prominence because of this show. Shortly thereafter, you start your own publishing company and self-publish your debut, The Words Don't Fit in My Mouth.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, because you're an artist, you know, but now this is a very businessy sort of thing that you're doing. So I want to know, like, how did you even know to start your own publishing company, that you were going to publish your own book? Like, how did you get there?
Well, I started with an agent. I had Faye Charles, my literary agent. I had like Marie Brown, Faye Charles, she was the baddest Black women agents at the time. And I went with Faye Charles. And I love Marie Brown to this day too. But I went with her. I had agents. I had Chuck Sutton for a manager. I had all these people, right? Got turned down by a bunch of publishing houses. Rightfully so. My book probably wasn't good enough. Manuscript was probably all right. But I knew I had an audience.
Yeah.
And I'm from Detroit. So I'm from an institution building city. I'm Tom Moore's daughter. Tom Moore is my daddy, who I never saw work for anybody a day in his life, who has a construction company, Tom's Trucking. Talib Kweli asked me the same question when we were on the road. He said, how did you get how you are? I never, when I won the Apollo, I turned down 3 record deals. Forgot, it was one of them, I forgot, but it was Sony offered me a deal, a publishing deal, and Elektra. I was already smart at 22. I didn't go to New York well, the thing is, I'm not interested in blowing up. I'm from Detroit. I'm about institution building. I was already about something. I didn't go to New York to become something. I already was someone.
Yes.
And I was a child of the Black arts movement, and I knew it.
Yeah.
And I knew that Harlem Renaissance writers like Langston Hughes, they did it themselves too.
Yes.
They became more famous after they were gone. But when they were here, and with us in my age, they were selling books out their car.
In fact, I think, because that's one of my favorite time periods is Harlem Renaissance. And I think like Wallace Thurman, I think they might have even had like a publishing company that they were putting out their work. Elaine Locke was a part of all of that.
Broadside Press in Detroit.
Yes.
I'm a Broadside Press baby. You know,
Yes.
I knew who Hakeem Adabuti was. I knew who
Yes.
Don L. Lee was. I knew what Third World Press was in Chicago. So
Yeah.
I had enough tutelage in Naomi Law Magic, who we just lost, who was our poet laureate of Detroit. God bless her. You know, I miss Naomi Law Magic. Had Lotus Press. So before I got to New York, I'd already sat in workshops with Naomi Law Magic, who had Lotus Press. So I knew that I didn't need a white publishing house, because my work was, I mean, especially then, Black Statue of Liberty, Black Girl Juice, Black of the Berry, Beautiful. I mean, them poems were very racially charged. I was young. They scared. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I was, you know, and me in my 40s is one thing. Me in my 20s, you know, it's different. Publishing house probably like, oh hell no, she wow. And I was and still am. But, you know, in your 20s, they're more scared of you, right? And so I understood who I was, and I knew that even if they don't have to validate my voice. Like, I didn't come from that where I'm waiting for some white press to validate me.
You published the first book by Saul Williams, who went on to his own international stardom, and Asha Bandale, who I recently saw on something. You know, it's like people.
I got Raz Baraka's book.
Raz Baraka, the current mayor of Newark, New Jersey. You published his first. Danny Simmons, who was the architect of Deaf Poetry.
His first book. I did his first book too.
You did his first book as well. So you were not only publishing your own work, but then you became a space for these other Black poets at that time to have publishing opportunities. Jessica, in that post I read that you had done honoring Miguel Algarin, you had talked about in there too, not considering yourself a slam artist. And I wanted to just ask you, because just for those who may not know, what is that distinction? Because I think sometimes people think poetry and spoken word is the same thing. So what is that distinction between a poet, a spoken word artist, a slam artist?
It's very different. Slam is very different in that it's not different in that they're not poets. I mean, there's some great poets that do slams. Some of them are extraordinary writers, but slam is a competition. And I didn't from Detroit. I didn't come, like, my work has been about liberating our people. My work is about pushing my craft forward and pushing our people forward at the same time. It's never been about, am I better than that poet? The poets I want to be better than or trying to head towards are not people in my age bracket. I'm trying to get to Toni Morrison, Zora Neale Hurston, Sonia Sanchez, Amiri Baraka. You know, those are the models for me. People my age are my peers. I don't compete with my peers. They're to me, they're tribal. So slamming just was something that white people did in Michigan. We didn't have a Black slam culture at that time when I was coming up. So I didn't have a big reference for it. So I went in there in the Eureka, and that's what they was about, some slams. And Keith Roach, rest his soul, who was also there and a big supporter of my work, called me Dennis Rodman from Detroit. He's like, listen, Rodman, I know you don't like this shit. Just go up there, just do you. You don't got to change nothing. Do your poems the way you normally would do them, and just do it. And I somehow made it. Me, Saul Williams, Mums the Schemer, also incredible poet actor. Bosia, incredible poet actor. All of them have done a lot of film, and are still writing. We became the 1996 New Eureka Poetry Slam team, and then there was a documentary made about it. So.
That was a famous that documentary. I remember at the Sundance Film Festival. That was like one of the big documentaries of that year, and that had a lot of PR behind it. Before we move forward, we did get a quick question. Which book of Saul's did she publish? I think, was it the 7th Octave?
The best one. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. So the 7th Octave.
Okay, thank you, Soul Cipher, for that question. The 7th Octave, which yes, the 7th was the first book.
And they wanted it. MTV Pocketbooks did want the book when he put out She, which is the book he put out with MTV. They wanted the 7th Octave. But I told them no, that he could write another book, because I knew. I was like, no, you can't have it. He could write a new one, and he's written all kinds of books since then.
So here we are, five collections of poetry later. I want to get into We Want Our Bodies Back. First, I just want to tell you, I've had so much fun. I've been on the virtual book tour with you since the spring, and it's been an honor to see all the conversations and the interviews.
Thank you.
I got the book in the summer. I had one day off this summer. I went to the beach, and I sat on the beach, and I read the book, and like the whole afternoon I was sitting on the beach. I think I DM'd you some photos
You
of me
did.
on the beach.
Yes, yes, you did.
I was like, she's got to know. I was like, will she ever see these pictures?
I
Will
did
she
see
ever?
them.
And then like you sent me like heart emojis back. And I was like, oh
I
my gosh.
checked.
And you know, there are some works, there's some works that you read that you actually have to stop like mid-paragraph after you've read a sentence. Like you have to stop and kind of digest it because it's kind of hitting you right in the
Who are you
chest.
talking to? Come on,
And
that's what Amiri Baraka, that's what Nikki Feeney
yes,
does to me. I have to stop
yes,
and go back and take a
yes.
pause.
It reminded me, I remember the first time I read a James Baldwin book when I was, 19 years old. I think it was Just Above My Head. And I had to like stop. It was like cathartic. It's work that's cathartic. Like you don't even know you're going to have your own experience with it as you're reading it. So that is how incredible this book is. I want to ask
Tell me about it. You have to tell me what poem, like what poem.
Oh, we're good. Do you see my little post?
I see your blue.
I read it for a second time this past week because I read it in the summer. I read it again this past week. My first question is the book is divided in 4 parts that are named after Nina Simone songs. I Got Life, I Put a Spell on You, Black is the True Color of My True Love's Hair, and Wild is the Wind, one of my all-time favorites. So I want to know why that format and why Nina Simone.
Nina Simone has been a model for me as an artist. You know, the choices I've made as a Black woman poet specifically have not always been easy choices. And the choices I've made have decided my journey, right, in different ways. I'm not moved by money. And the way that Nina Simone aligned herself with the civil rights movement, and she didn't have to do that. Some artists are apolitical, and they decide that my art is for art's sake. And I don't have any space in that. I don't even know what that feels like. And I feel like Nina Simone has just been that model for me, is the kind of legacy that I want to leave while I'm here, and when I'm gone is a Nina Simone type legacy. And so that's her. And she's also her poem, those songs are in We Want Our Bodies Back. So I use those poems.
They're kind of interspersed as you're reading different stanzas, and it goes into the song. It's we're gonna get into it. It's really
keep
powerful.
Me sane, really. It really is. It reminds me that you're not the only one. That's an ancestor tribal member. And it's, so because you have those moments like when Sandra Bland gets murdered and you're writing this poem, I'm thinking like, what's keeping me on the ground? What's keeping me okay with this moment? And what would Nina Simone do? People always ask, what would James Baldwin do? And he's also one of my heroes. And so I have to remind myself, and I bring them up. I talk about, Catherine Dunham and Judith Jameson. Like I bring up these women, because I have to say, I'm not by myself.
Yes, absolutely. In the book, there's so many. Well, there's so many like homage. I felt like there were a lot of homages because you were referencing Catherine Dunham and Josephine Baker, and I mean so many folks, and then people that obviously are influences like Ntozake Shange and Gwendolyn Brooks. And I want to read something. Now this is just on the front flap of the book. Just on the front flap. I want to read this. Fierce and passionate, jessicaCaremoore argues that Black women spend their lives building a physical and emotional shelter to protect themselves from misogyny, criminalization, hatred, stereotypes, sexual assault, objectification, patriarchy, and death threats. We want our bodies back as an exploration and a defiant stance against these many attacks. So true as you read the book. But I have to say, I identified, it resonated with me. Like I really kind of saw so much. You kind of took me back through so much of my own life. Where let me tell you, when I read Jane Kennedy, I was like, Jane Kennedy.
You gotta be proud to know who Jane Kennedy, baby.
Yeah, that was like everybody's childhood crush was Jane Kennedy.
My brothers. So my brothers are 6, 8 years older. So those are my Mark and John, my big brothers.
And I was like, Debbie Thomas. Even Rick Springfield got name checked. I was like, okay, Iceberg Slim. I've read all the Iceberg Slim books. I was like, Jessica. So I just kind of felt like I'm right there with her. I'm right there. I totally know the references. I know exactly what she's talking about. So and like I said, the homages, it's an incredible, and even just there are things that pop up again here and there. Southern Comfort.
Yeah.
Cool Miles.
That's my daddy. That's my daddy. My daddy plays Southern Company, Smoke Cool Miles. So that's
Right.
why I got how I
Yes.
got here.
And going back to what you were just saying about the vitalness of Nina Simone with this, you know, there's a couple times you referenced to like the poem as the proof of life.
Yes.
And when I was reading it, I really could feel this sense of that, like poetry saved you, like poetry, that's how it felt. Like it's like the lifeline. I don't even want to necessarily, it's an extension of yourself. I just felt like as I was reading it, this is the lifeline. Like this,
I
this
mean,
is it.
a friend of mine, Booker told me, he said, you are the poem.
Yes,
You know,
that's what I'm saying.
And I am. I feel like I absolutely
Yes.
am not disconnected from my work. And so when I read, that's why I've been able to translate off the page, is because
Yes.
I don't know how to not connect with my own words. When
Yes.
I'm giving it to somebody, they believe me. And
Yes.
I always, when I'm doing writing workshops with young people, I'm always saying the thing that you have to be most brutal about when it comes to your writing is that you have to be brutally honest.
Yeah.
Like, people have to believe you.
Yes.
So I don't go up. I can write about other things, but everything is connected to self.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
you're in everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's real. But I love that you actually read the book, because
Oh,
people, you know.
I'm telling you. So I want to say too. So the book is dedicated to Sandra Bland, as also too, as well as in Tazake Shange, but it's just for Sandra Bland. And I wanted to ask you. Of course, we all know, you know, the tragic story of Sandra Bland and her legacy. I wanted to ask you: was that the starting point for the book? Was it, or did she come later? Was it always planned about, like? Did you start writing from a place of, oh, this is about we want our bodies back in Sandra Bland? Like, how did the whole theme of the book, because all throughout the book it's about bodies. It's not even just about women's bodies. It's the gentrification lost bodies
It's
that you
about
talk
Black
about.
boys being
Exactly. So how did the whole theme even come to take place? And was Sandra Bland always at the center of that from the beginning?
I don't know, you know, when I'm writing poetry, I'm just kind of writing, you know, poets to me are just like the historians of the times. I mean, I wrote I Can't Breathe for Eric Gardner.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and it became from, then I went to Ferguson, and it was like for Eric Gardner and for Mike Brown. Sandra Bland was just a part of that time period when I was writing. Aretha Franklin happened to pass during the same time period. So as I was putting the book together, my friend Brad Walron, who's a wonderful poet, you know, who's helping me kind of put this in order before we took it to HarperCollins Amistad, is, you know, I realized the through line to me in all the poems is love, and it's love for my people. But it's also about me. There's a balance of some because there's soft poems in the book. You know,
there are, and there's hope.
Love.
It's very, Jessica, it's very heavy. There's a
Yeah.
lot of death in this book, and the truth of that, and the historical context, you know, and the current context. But even in We Want Our Bodies Back, like when you talk about there, I think toward the end when you talk about, you know, I resurrect my body daily.
That's right.
You talk about, you know, the rebirth, the rise up. So there's a hope there. So there's kind of, I always feel like the hope is like the resilience. It's the not giving up, and the being true to self. The book opens with the poem about your father, which I thought was interesting. That's the opening poem of the book, and for me, and you'll tell me, but when I read it, my first reaction was, oh, that's the first body she wanted back.
That's right.
Okay.
Because people have different interpretations of what we want our bodies back means, right? It could have been from, you know, from the first slave that was brought over on the slave ship, right? We want that body back. We want all that time back. We want our, you know, when I'm doing the poem, I'm asking for it all back. We want our culture. We want our justice. We want our freedom. But my daddy, like, come on, you know, I mean, he died in 1994, and it's something I still deal with. I'm actually in 21 doing a full art installation in his honor about the work he did in Huntsville, Madison, Alabama, where my family still is, and coming up north to find work. And his story is really amazing for me, and transformed my life. And so my father's death was always something that was unsettling for me. I was never okay with the way that he died, or I was never just settled. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at being okay. People are like, oh, he's moved on everything, ancestor. And for me, something about death, it's just still worrisome for me. And I cry about my daddy like it happened last week. you know, January 3rd. So the New Year's Eves are always very difficult for me. I'm always going into New Year thinking of, I remember getting the call on the 3rd of January. And so I started with my daddy because you're exactly right. Because if I wanted a body back, that would be the one.
Yes.
And so, but if not for his death, you know, I never left Detroit with my father living.
Because the time period, it's 94, and then shortly thereafter, you're getting in that, in 1995, you're in that purple pickup truck.
I'm gone.
Headed to New York. So I can't breathe. Just another phenomenal piece. There's a point in there where you talk about being at the Ferguson protest and participating with Talib Kweli and Rosa Clemente. I've had a couple of experiences in my own life where I thought, oh, this is it. Like I'm staring my imminent death in the face. And it was interesting what crossed my mind. It wasn't, my life didn't flash before me. It's almost like you don't even have that much time to kind of think. You think, oh, I always thought like, wow, okay, this is how it's going to happen.
This is how it's going to go out, right?
Yeah, this is how it's like. And I wanted to ask you at that moment, the AR-15 pointed at you on the ground in Ferguson. Like, what was that moment? Right.
I thought it was my first time in a protest. I thought I was going to be possibly killed. I never felt like, I've been protesting since Malice Green in Detroit when I was 18 years old. You know, I've been on the streets for everybody, everyone in New York City. I mean, and thousands of times. And so I never felt like I was going to get murdered until I went to Ferguson. I was like, it's the way the police officers look so shaky with these big guns in their hand, and they didn't look comfortable holding them, and they look nervous, and they also look mean. There was no love. I've been around cops in different kind of situations where, you know, sometimes they are all right and sometimes they're assholes. There in Ferguson, it was an assault on that community, and I could tell there was no love for those Black boys and girls. That, you know, I remember them just being like, go home, and their kids being like, I live right here, this is my home, you're in my neighborhood, you're on my block, telling me to go home, but this is my block, like, you get the fuck out, you know. But it was a peaceful protest, and that's what shook me, is that nothing was happening. Like the police completely instigated all the mischief, all the chaos. And Rosa, who's a very astute activist, very, you know, knew what was going on. She said, "Oh, I saw them kind of getting in formation." I was like, "Why are they doing that?" She said, "Oh, they're about to cause some havoc and try to get everybody to run and get separated, and it's a way for them to break up the crowd." And we were doing ciphers out there with young people. Like, it was beautiful. It was, you know, no justice, no peace. It was this really beautiful sense of our community, and you know, it was goodness. And then out of nowhere, I think someone threw probably some provocateur threw a water bottle towards the police, and that was all they needed. It wasn't no bomb.
That was kind of the catalyst for what happened next.
My friends got picked up. They got beaten, put in jail, but they slid us on the ground. You know, they put the guns to our backs. You know, we were just terrified. We're watching these other people where, you know, you can only be so scared because we were super calm. But there were young people, you know. I remember pulling that little girl down. I'll never forget her. She's standing up. They're like, "Get down," and she stands up, and I pull her back down, like, "Baby, get down." Right.
Even in the midst of all of that, you're having to help pull this teenager down.
And another boy was in Rose's lap, literally shaking. And we had young people right around us. We were terrified. And so, you know, so it shook me. And the next day we went to go back out. It was a Black cop that came and told us that we could go, saw us and said, "Okay, let them go." And the next day I remember Talib looking at me saying, "You want to go back out?" And I was like, "Yeah," but you could tell that I was, and I didn't really cry. I came home and I took a couple days, and then I just cried.
And you even, I think in some way, shape, or that's what I got even just reading the poem where you talk about kind of how your body hurt for days after that. And I know that sense of sometimes there's a fallout after the fact. There's a shock, there's a trauma, and then there's a fallout. Jessica, I'm going to move on to something else in the book I want to talk about, because I know Instagram, once you hit that hour.
What time is it? Okay, good. I was just looking at the time.
We're already like deep in, and then we got some ground.
Okay, let's go. Let's unpack.
Okay, we got to keep unpacking, because this, like I said, this book, it's heavy, and there's a lot of death while there's a lot of hope. There's also humor. I want people to know there's humor in this book as well. I'm going to read a little JessicaCaremoore.
Okay.
The first time I read this, I laughed out loud
Okay,
until
what do you,
tears came
Sky
to
Miles?
my
What are
eyes.
you reading?
No, Sky Miles was also was delightful, but and funny. But no, but this was the thing. I mean, I laughed out loud, tears to my eyes when I first read Aretha in August.
Oh, well.
Okay, and so I'm gonna read that.
I love
Aretha's voice is what God sounds like in my city. She is the sound of a black Jesus Holy Ghost chased with hair grease and cognac.
Come on now.
The smell of Granny's Sunday breakfast pressing combs and tendered scalp. The beat of every little girl's holy broken heart. A symphony of gospel gunshots, pool halls, police sirens, protests, rebellions, vinyl records, and late Friday night basement parties. A score conducted like the first time a girl feels like a woman in full control of her bedroom, and even so always love. I just love that. I could see it like a
Thank
movie in
you.
my mind. And I wanted to ask you, what is she's another Detroit icon. So what is, for you growing up, what did Aretha mean for you in the context of Detroit?
She literally was the soundtrack for my childhood. She was in everybody's home. I live in her neighborhood. So I live in Boston Edison. I live where Aretha and Smokey lived up the street from here. So, and so did Joe Louis. So I live in a historic black neighborhood where folks like that grew up in big brick houses. Yeah. And I'm honored to have one for myself now and for my son. And she just, there's lots of people, and I'm around a lot of singers, and I remember that funeral, and everybody was trying to hit that unreachable note, but Aretha, those things are real. Like Aretha was a young mom. She grew up in Detroit. It's a gritty place to grow up. Like she was real. She was real. You know what I mean? And you could hear that shit was in her voice too. You could hear the gospel in her voice, but you could hear that's what I mean, that press and combed and pool halls, that's Aretha Franklin, like that, a shot of whiskey, like that. So and to me, like, every singer, like when I think of Whitney Houston, for instance, like that's not what I think of. Even though that Jersey girl was all that too, right? Yeah. But at the same time, just Aretha to me she just, I don't know, Detroit, that she was and is Detroit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Definitive.
I was putting that home. Mink got to hit the floor one time to make Detroit real. I mean, Mink on the ground. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the way I roll my hats, my style, and how I get on stage. Yes, that's me looking at Aretha Franklin do it. And me watching my other mothers. And how they get down, how they represent our city all over the world. And so, minks and dive hats and certain kind of shoes. Detroit is a stylish black place. And so, she was, and I said she's actually the rattle of my bike. I mean, she just was the soundtrack to everything. And the Motown sound in general as well. Like anything Smokey, Diana, Temptations, Marvin Gaye. That's just what Detroit, I didn't know jazz. And I know people who grew up with like jazz moms and dads. I had a Motown daddy. Like Gladys, we listened to soul music, Gladys Knight and the Pips. Like that's what I thought music was. When I won the Apollo, some brothers were doing the Temptations. I was rooting for them. Right. It was 5 brothers tearing down these Temptations. Yeah. So I was like, oh, they about to win. Yeah. And I beat the Temptations. I said, ooh, I'm gonna get the trouble for this one. But and so that's what Detroit is, a soulful town. Well,
Aretha not only gets one, she actually gets 2 poems in the book, if I remember correctly. You also, there's a beautiful poem, Dear Ozzy, Dear Ruby, or Dear Ruby Josie, and of course, 2 other icons. And you say here in
Dear Ozzy, Dear Ruby, that's that love poem I wrote for them.
That's the love poem. And you say in that poem there, you mentioned something here about, Dear Ozzy, thank you for your kind words in Harlem when I nervously shared that Abyssinian stage with you. So here you are at the world famous Abyssinian church in Harlem. What were you doing with Ozzy Davis, and what was Ozzy Davis like?
Ozzy Davis, amazing. Ozzy Davis changed my whole life that night. So I was reading slave narratives with a group of celebrity readers at the Abyssinian church. And I was sitting in a pew next to Ozzy Davis, and I was nervous as hell. And he could tell that I was freaking out. I was like, I am sitting next to Ozzy Davis. And I went up, I had to go before him. And so thank God. And so his voice is like, ooh. And so I go up, I do my narrative, and I sat back down next to him, and he nudged me really hard in the side and said, you done good. And I was like, thank you. I turned 12. I was like, thank you so much, Ozzy Davis. You know, I don't know why I don't have a picture of this moment, but that did happen. And then Ruby Dee, I knew her more. So I did readings with her in New York, and she knew who I was. So that was, but with Ozzy, I was really in awe because I didn't know him, you know, like the same way I got to know Ruby Dee a little more. Ruby Dee, that's a real story. Like she told me in the Schomburg, there was an event we were at together in the lobby, and she said, Jessica, I slapped Denzel Washington in American Gangster.
I remember that.
When she told me that, it wasn't in the script.
Oh, so that wasn't in the script. That famous, that was like her big moment where she was kind of reading him the riot act, and like, it was basically, he was the big deal, and she was letting him know, I'm the big, you came from the big deal. Well, they are just, I mean, Ruby Dee, Ozzy Davis, I mean, that was another sad, thank God they lived as long as they did, and they were living legends. Before we went,
my models for Black love. You know, I've been in search of my Ozzy Davis my whole life. Where is my Ozzy Davis? He's better come on.
Yes. Okay. No, to have those are like great models to have for sure. I want to talk about a few things quickly other than the book before we run out of time.
Okay.
And then I want to ask you if you wouldn't mind gracing us with reading something from the book before we close.
Of course.
But I want to just touch it because there's so many things that you're involved in that I want to make sure other people are aware of. Okay. So I want to go through a few things. But 15 years ago, you founded Black Women Rock.
Yes.
And so
16 years now. 16. Yeah.
16 years. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah. So you founded and executive produced Black Women Rock, founded 16 years ago. Yes. So just talk a little bit about what that organization is and the significance of Betty Davis.
Black Women Rock is a movement with Black women rock artists around the world, more specifically nationally. We do have Sate, our sister in Canada, who rocks with us pretty often. I founded Black Women Rock at the National Black Arts Festival because I was a young producer on a young producers team, and I wanted to bring something different to the festival. I was on the rock scene in New York, so along with just being in the poetry scene, I gravitated to music. I was really interested in jungle and drum and bass and finding a way for my poetry to translate to bigger audiences. And so I gotten to know Greg Tay and Vernon Reed and myself, Sharif Simmons, Lisa Jesse Peterson. A lot of the poets were interested in Saul Williams, for that matter, in figuring out a way to get our poems. We wanted to be rock stars, man, you know, like it was just to be honest. And so I hung out with the rock. So I saw Timma Kali, you know, I saw Imani Azuri. I saw these women who were making rock music. I had never experienced that. I knew it existed, right? I knew Tina Turner was, I knew Grace Jones was, but to see women my age doing it, so I knew them. So I told the festival, I said, I got this thing. And I'd heard about Betty Davis also, Amir from the Roots, who y'all know him as Questlove, right? Questlove, actually, one of his books, Something to Food About, which I'm sure you're familiar with because you're a foodie, is like one of the books that's holding up my phone right now. It's so funny. MK Asante is bigger than hip hop. These are like my people. So he told me I smiled with Betty Davis teeth at a gig at Wetlands. And I was like, okay. He's like, do you know who I'm talking about? He said, you smile, you look like Betty Davis. And so I looked up Betty Davis. I knew he wasn't talking about the white lady from Betty Davis' Eyes, who was married to Miles Davis, who's a funk rock icon. Yes. He lives in Pittsburgh. Yep. And I decided to create this concert with all Black women rock artists celebrating the contemporaries with the daughters of Betty. And why I say daughters of Betty, why we claim that as like one of our monikers, is that like Betty, you may not have heard of Liza Kobe. Maybe you haven't heard of Yazra or Joy, Timma Kali, or Julie Dexter, or Imani Azuri, or Stephanie Christian, or the countless women, hundreds who have done my show for the last 16 years because they're world famous. Divinity Rocks, Nick West, all over the world, big shows in Europe, touring with Lenny Kravitz, right? Touring with Gary Clark Jr. Shout out to Jackie Vincent in Austin, Texas. Like doing these big major shows or helping other pop rock artists with their as support vocals, but not the star. I put them headliners. I make the independent Black women rock artists the stars. And we put together it's usually a 12 to 15 piece Black women rock orchestra.
Wow.
And we do a damn best rock and roll show you ain't seen yet.
Yeah.
And it's
I
not,
can't
it's not
wait
an
to see
R&B
it
show.
as soon as we can get back in the theater. And I can't wait to see it. And Jessica, you beyond the genre of rock, a lot of people may not know you've done a number of hip hop
Oh
collaborations
yeah.
with, you know, luminaries such as Talib Kweli and Young
Yes.
Jeezy
Yes.
and Nas. I
Yes.
think you even open Common has a new
I'm on
album.
Beautiful
So
Revolution. I'm on his new
yes,
album. Yeah.
yes. So
Shout
you
out to
opened
Kareem Riggins.
Common's new album.
Thank
So,
you.
and then in 2015, you put out your own
Black
musical
Tea.
project, Black Tea, The Legend of Jessi James, which I recommend. I'm going to tell everyone where to go before we're
Okay.
done because they've got to, there's so many different
Get
places
my
they need to go.
music. I
Yeah,
have
because
vinyls.
this,
I have vinyl records at
you have vinyl, you have
jessicacaremoore.com.
CD. The album is beautiful. The music is beautiful. The poetry, of course, is beautiful. My question is, because you're collaborating with many great people on that project, one of my all-time favorites you're collaborating with, and I just want to know what was
Is it Roy Ayers? Is it
Roy
Roy Ayers?
Ayers.
Because
Roy,
he's my
how did you
papa.
know? How did you know?
Because of course, because that's Roy Ayers and Jose James are both on that record who are
Yes.
phenomenal, right?
So how did you end up working with Roy Ayers? How did you pull him into that project?
Well, you have to know that Roy Ayers, I've been performing with him and Gil Scott Heron since I was in the baby. They all brought me on stage.
Yeah.
Gil Scott Heron, I performed countless shows with him when I was just in the 90s in New York because I had a band and I would open for, I got this flyer I'll share on Instagram with me and Roy. Roy opened me. They would request me to open.
Wow.
If Roy Ayers ever saw me in the audience, he always put me on the stage.
Wow.
Come on, baby, let's go.
Yeah.
Come on, baby.
Wow.
And so it's deep as the pandemic. We had a joint concert together that we were doing at the Detroit Institute of Arts that got canceled 2 days before the gig, and I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Because that was like, because there was actually one gig that was actually going to happen. But it ended up getting canceled due to a COVID scare at the DIA. And so he's my friend. That's why. And I always say, rich is your relationships. Yes. Who you can call. It's not about money. I called him. I said, Baba Roy, I got this record, You Want Poems. And his brother John Dixon wrote the piano parts. I said, I would love to get some vibes on it. Okay, baby. All right, just send me the track. Like, that's it.
That's well, that's one of the many amazing songs on the album, which again, I'm going to tell people exactly where they can go, which is on your website to be able to get that on vinyl or CD. You were part of another music project with Techno luminaries that came out, the Beneficiaries that came out this summer. Yes. So talk a little bit about the Beneficiaries and also along with that Salt City. It's two different projects, but they both have kind of a theme of techno.
Techno, yes. Techno was black. Techno was black.
Yes, Techno being Salt City being the Choreopoem that premiered in Detroit in 2019, just last year.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about this new project with Jeff Mills that came out this summer, the Beneficiaries, and also Salt City.
First of all, Eddie Fowlkes and Jeff Mills, the Crystal City is alive. That project with like Jeff Mills, with Prince, right? And like Stevie Wonder, like Jeff Mills is on my top list of people that I wanted to collaborate with. So I grew up in Detroit, so I know that techno was black. And I know that these brothers made this music. People give it to Europe and they think it's white people and it's this electronic dance music. But techno has its roots in Detroit, has its roots in gospel and all kinds of other types of music and soul music and Motown. All of it is up in there. Jeff is a genius. He actually came after me, which was just amazing to me because I'm a super fan and we've become friends now. And he came to me to first work with him with a NASA project. He has a radio station sponsored by NASA. Only Jeff Mills has that. And so the first thing I did with him was narrate his NASA radio shows. He picks an artist to collaborate with. He picked me. He loved what we did together. And then we started just doing this on Skype. We started talking about what Afrofuturism was. And he would question me like, well, why do you write about the right now? And I say, oh, the right now needed me, And so we were going back and forth because we're very different, ideologically. But Jeff is like, very fabulous and internationally known in Japan and Vietnam and France and works with orchestras. Yes. But he's still black. He's still a brother from the west side of Detroit who went to Mackenzie High School. And so what he liked in our conversation, what we were grounded in, was that we were both from the west side of Detroit, both from the neighborhood. And he said, so some things don't have to be said with you. Because he could have picked any poet. Some other poet that someone could have thrown at him and said, oh, this poet, this person's won a Pulitzer, this person's done this, blah, blah. And he's like, no, with you, I don't have to, there's not a lot of things we have to talk about.
Yes.
The work. And I wrote a 7-page manifesto for him. And Jeff sent me back an email. He said, very interesting. And I said, give me a minute. Listen, he made me work for them bones.
Yeah. Well,
So
let
the
me tell
Crystal
you, the
City is
music,
alive.
the
Come
music's
on.
phenomenal.
It's phenomenal.
The
Eddie
poetry, the
Fowles.
whole, and I thought it was just amazing. And as a person, like, I'm not that knowledgeable about techno, and I don't really follow techno. So, I mean, it blew my mind. Just the music,
The
the
sound.
sound effects, the
It's so
mixing,
African,
the
man. It's
DJ.
Africa.
Yeah,
It's African.
yeah,
And
it's
the
amazing.
thing is, techno
Yes,
producers tend to not want to work with people who talk. It's
yes,
really about the music for them. So for
yes,
Jeff to say, put me in the studio, and we whispered, and I listened to him. He directed me, I'm just honored to be a
yeah,
part of that project. And Salt City is a choreopoem that it's just me and Jeff were just on the same wavelength because I was
yes,
already in the middle of doing Salt City, and Salt City is Afro, I guess it's futurism, whatever. It's Black people in 3071. It's about a Black girl named Salt who's born into the salt mines of Detroit and travels through this electric forest. She's born with a 909 RPM heartbeat, which is,
yes,
anybody knows techno, that's the RPM. Travels to another world and can't find her people. Her
yes,
people have disappeared. The tribe is gone. The
yes,
salt mine dies, and she has to figure out how to carry on without being able to do the
yes,
Sankofa. However, so you got to go back to go forward. She's stuck in the
yes,
future and has to figure out how do I make sure they don't forget who our people were.
yes,
And it's 90 minutes. It's all Detroit techno. So people were watching the show like this. It's gorgeously done as far as like the lights and the sounds and everything is orchestrated so beautifully. Aku Kadogo, so this is a full circle for me, who was the woman in yellow and For Color Girls, is the director and choreographer.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow,
and then we also brought in Marlise Yerby for this last iteration, who worked on
yes.
Rent. So these women are powerhouse Black
Yes.
theater women, passing on the little baton to my little women
Yes,
self.
yes. So that had its premiere in Detroit in 2019. So I hope when we're back in the theater,
Yeah,
we'll see that as well. So
coming.
Jessica, I can't believe we in our 1 hour constrained time of Instagram, we're down to the last 8 minutes.
I heard that they don't cut us off at 8 o'clock, but I don't believe it anymore. So I think we should go and listen just in case, so you don't lose this show.
Okay, just in case. So I want to quickly, because I got 2 more
I have to
things.
read something short. You want me to just talk?
Well, I want to talk about one more thing, and then I would love it if you read Where Are the People.
Okay, good. That's
Before we
not
closed out. But I want to just let me give a few, just so we don't lose this. First, I just want to let people know they can find you on Instagram at jessicaCaremoore. There's no E at the end in that version, at jessicaCaremoore, no E at the end. Your website is jessicaCaremoore with the E at the end.com. Yes. There they can also buy the album Black Tea, The Legend of Jessi James on the website. Yes. Your Jessica Caremoore talk show is every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. EST, streaming live on Instagram Live. They can buy your first 4 books on moreblackpress.com, as well as some other books as well.
Yeah, they can go to jessicacaremoore.com for everything.
Okay, then go to Jessica Caremoore, and then blackwomanrock.com for Black Woman Rock. The Beneficiaries. The Crystal City is alive. I know that's on Bandcamp. You can sample that on Bandcamp, stream that on Bandcamp, as well as buy that at Jeff Mills accessrecords.com as well. So
it's on Amazon too. It's everywhere.
And it's on Amazon. So it's I'm going to post everything as well in my page. So everything will be there and people will be able to see all the different links and where they can go, because you're so prolific and there's so much diversity to the type of work that you do. I just want to make sure people know. And of course they can get We Want Our Bodies Back.
Get this book. It's a great gift. This is such a good gift. Get it for Kwanzaa.
Yes.
Get it. You can get it from a local bookstore. You don't have to go to Amazon. You can go to the local bookstore and support.
So I would love for you, if you, thank you again for being here. If you could read, I love, Where Are the People?
Where Are the People? I got it. Yes, I got you. And this is about me and my son. I don't know if you know the story, going to get a pizza, because you've been in my reading, so you know what it is. And this is a neighborhood that my Wayne State University came up in, the school I went to, called the Cass Corridor. So it's been kind of renamed Midtown. And so we got a pizza that had pork on it and we couldn't eat it. And I couldn't find nobody to give some pizza to. 5 years ago, I could have found some people to give some food to. So this is for the people, for the bodies we can no longer locate. Where are the people? Where are the one-way tickets? Who signed the death certificates? Where are the magicians, the madmen, the toothless, the smoothless, the poets, the corner store prophets, the bus stop historians, the traffic stoppers? Where are the people? Where are the blues? Under which pile of gravel? Where are they buried? Hurricane Cast Corridor, Hurricane Cast Corridor. Where is the soil, the soul, the socks, the soles, your shoes? Where is the heroin? Where are the pills? Where are the women? Where are the thrills? Where is Cast Corridor? My student asked. Is it a building? Is it this way? Is it that way? Your school is sitting in it. I answer, you is it. The dogs are walking walking the people. The dogs have parks. The parks don't have children. Where are the people, the stepped over, the forgotten Holocaust, the fragile, the beautiful, the fast talkers, the backward walkers, the 3 a.m. stalkers? Where did they take them? When would they return? Where is the balance? Where is the money? Where are the schools? Where are the people? We all got Wi-Fi. Nobody getting high outside. Where are the beds? Where is they heads? Where are the recognizable street signs? Where is Joe Louis? Where are the black people? My white neighbor asked me, Jessica, where are the black people? Where are the chosen people? Where are our hearts, our guitars, our bass players, Kenny Mack, Anthony Tolson, rest in peace? Where are the anointed, the children of God? Where is the stage, the holy water? Where is the black imagination located? How much does it cost per square foot to rent there? Is there a rent your own black imagination option? Where are the couples fighting in the alleys? Where are the purple flavor Mad Dog 2020 labels? Where are the needles? Where is the good time? Where did all these goddamn bike lanes come from? Listen, where is the line that simply exists? Where is the painted line to live, to breathe? Where are the parks of swings? Where are the children supposed to live? Where are the children supposed to run? Where are the twilight teasers, the moonlight mythology makers? Where are the military vets are mentally ill? Where are the people? Where are the people? Where are the people? San Francisco, Oakland, Harlem, Detroit, Chicago. Do you know? Do you know, huh? Have you seen them? Do they all die so new Detroit could live? Do they all die so new San Francisco could live? Where is your conscience? Where is this nonsense coming from? Where is humanity? Where are the people? Where are the people? The one-way tickets? The message is still in the bottle. Where are the indigenous? Where are the salt mines? Where are the people? Where are the people? Where are the people? When you find them, please tell them I have an overpriced gentrified cheese and pork pizza with their names on it. Tell them I'm writing for them so they won't disappear without a fight. So thank you.
Ms. Caremoore,
amazing. I love
thank you so much. I love you. Thank you. So it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And I wish you a wonderful holiday season. The last thing we didn't quite get to, I want to say as well, is that because this is just incredible, that you're prominently featured on the 4th floor at the Smithsonian African American Museum of Art and Culture in Washington, D.C., where your work can be seen and your voice can be heard. I mean, what
so amazing, right?
What an absolute honor. Jessica, thank you. Thank you for coming down and sharing about your journey and sharing your work and just being with us here today. I wish you a happy holiday season.
You too. Have a beautiful 21. We're going to get past 20.
Yes,
and
we will.
Just thank you for being like so supportive of my work and actually knowing my work. Because not everybody does that work. So I appreciate you're such a real journalist.
Thank you. And everybody, go out, get your copies wherever books are sold across all platforms. We want our bodies back. jessicaCaremoore. Jessica, again, thank you. Bless you.
Okay. And I'll see you. We'll get to share this, right, with everybody?
Oh, absolutely. We'll get to share it.
I can't wait. I can't wait to share it. All right. Love you. Take care.
Thank you.
Peace. Bye. Look, I don't even know how to get off. Okay. I got to leave.
Okay. All right. Thank you all so much for joining the show today. And until next time, we'll see you again soon. Thank you, guys.